Hi friends, this is Caitlin. Today we're going to be making a snarky Christmas card in honor of Stamping Bella. So for this card I grabbed some of my favorites. I have the Oddball Elf Girl, Oddball Christmas Pets, and then the Oddball Festive sentiment set. I wasn't sure exactly which sentiment I was going to be using when I started out, but these are all hilarious and I just love the attitude of them. They might not be for every person that you're sending a Christmas card to, but I think we all know at least one person who would appreciate a good snarky card. So to balance everything out, I grabbed this really fun Ho 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 paper from My Favorite Things. I have a piece of gray cardstock that I'm going to use for my card base, and then I'm going to be using the Hello Bluebird Deckle mini Slimline dies to cut out my scene. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss any crafty goodness and inspiration with me every Friday afternoon. So, like I said, I did trim out my gray cardstock panel. Right now it is 7 inches by 6. So on the 7-inch side, I'm scoring it in the middle at 3.5 and just folding it. I prefer a 3.5 by 6-inch mini slimline. I'm going to be trimming down my pattern paper panel so that I have a nice little border all the way around. Nothing super dramatic or crazy here. I just knew that I wanted to keep the area behind my characters pretty clean and empty instead of building in a full Copic scene. So I thought a little bit of a busier pattern paper behind them would help to balance all of that out. To start planning out my little scene that I am going to create, I held up my dies, different size dies, to make sure that there was going to be enough of a border with that pattern paper, but also that my space would be big enough to fit that elf with her ornament. And so now I'm going in with a pencil just to roughly sketch out my area so I know kind of where to keep my stamping and how much general space I'm going to have. So just for the size, I think it's hilarious too, but mostly for the size, I ended up going with the deck the halls and not your family sentiment. And I was playing around with where the cat was going to go, and so I decided first to just stamp my sentiment in place. I normally, if I'm really concerned with all of my items being super straight, I will do some practice stamping on acetate or leftover packaging, but today I just didn't have it in me. So I would just pick up my images where I thought they were going to be on the door and then use the grid lines on the door to kind of just straighten anything up that needed a little bit of a tweak. So you can see I'm kind of just shifting things around, and then I just went for it. I did mask my cat. Only a teeny tiny little bit of her shoe kind of made it there behind him, but I think that it is still great. And because everything shifted over, I'm just also kind of shifting my outline so that I have an idea of where to stop my blending, because I am going to be creating a floor for these guys. So while I jump into the Copic coloring, I just wanted to explain kind of what inspired me to make this video today. Today is Bellarific Friday, and for those who don't know or are not super familiar with Stamping Bella, the founder, owner, main Bella herself passed away recently, very unexpectedly, at least as far as I know within the craft community. Not a lot of people were aware that she was having some health issues. And so she did pass away. And so today a lot of people are celebrating. All of the other Bellas, the design team are the Bellas, and they have encouraged everyone to have a Bellarific Friday celebrating the memory of, the owner, Emily, and everything that she did and was, and how great she was, and how she inspired so many people with her company and the stamps that she created. And so I am an avid lover of Stamping Bella, and so nothing seemed better to me for this week's video than a little tribute to her and a Bellarific Friday. So now that, we went there, I'm going to catch us up on the coloring that's happening. So I colored in my little elf skin tone. I went with my normal kind of go-to Caucasian skin tone. I'll have all of the colors listed down in the description box below for you guys, as always. And then I did want to ground the characters here, so I did add some neutral grays to the bottom just to give a little bit of a floor line. And I did carry that blending down along the sides on either side of the sentiment, just to help kind of separate the top area from the bottom. But that is all of the background I'm going to be creating here today. The upper part we're just going to leave nice and white, since, like I said, the rest of our actual card base is not plain white. It'll help to balance all of that out. So I went in with my favorite go-to red combination for Christmas time, which is the R89, 59, and 29, or 89, 39, 29, kind of depending on my mood. And I colored in her little dress. Now I'm going in with her stockings, and we're going to create some red and green stripes, which I think are just so stinking cute. I love the oddballs and the crazy proportions they have, and that deadpan stare. It just cracks me up every single time. I have so many of the oddballs, and I love all of them. And I love that you can really change the tone of the image just by how you color it. I've had a lot of fun in the past with coloring these up in very crazy combinations to kind of make them fit for other holidays or other scenarios. And it's just definitely a brand of stamps that encourages me to have a lot of fun. So I am going in now with the same YG markers to shade in the outer part, the wrapping part of the present, and this ornament. So I wanted to keep the center part of my ornament and the edges nice and bright to help give that very rounded effect. And we're going to go in at the end and add some detailing to try to make it look like a glittered ornament. I'm not sure how completely successful I was in that, but I definitely like how it turned out. So I also have a YR combination that I'm going to be using throughout this card. I used it for her belt, her button. I'm going to pull it in for these boots, also adding in a little bit of the E29 for an extra depth and shadow. And then we're going to use those same color combination on the jingle bell that's on the end of her hat, as well as the tiny little bell details on the cat's hat. So I tried to stick with a very limited color scheme for this card, so it's a lot of repetition between those R's, the YGs, and the YRs, with a couple neutrals thrown in. I definitely wanted to play with the neutrals as far as the floor, and then for the cat I left him till the very end because I really wasn't sure what kind of color scheme I wanted to go with for him, but I ended up using my cool gray markers to shade him up and give him a little bit of texture with stripes, which I think turned out really sweet. So I'm going in now with those YR markers, like I said, to shade in her bell. And the one thing about these stamps is they definitely are very detailed, so this is a great one to practice, you know, having a very light touch and a lot of control, which for me sometimes when I'm filming can be hard because I can't, you know, lean in and get all up in the face of my project. I have to stay a little bit back so that my head stays out of the frame. And sometimes that's not always so easy when it comes to coloring. But I did my best and I think it turned out pretty good. I only had a few times where I had to go in with my white gel pen this time to clean up any edges where I might have gone out of the lines. And you'll see here in a second, I did a lot of spinning my panel around to make sure that I had a great angle. And I think that really, really helped me. I had a lot of fun playing with the shading on this one. The shadows on her hat and like the cat's hat and the ornament, all of that shading was really fun to play around with and make sure I got some really nice depth and highlight, some really good contrast. So I went in and kind of tried to accentuate her curls. I used my E49, 59, 57, which is one of my favorite brunette combinations. It gives a little bit of warmth, which I think really ties well in with my YR combo that I used in the other areas of the card. The one thing I will say is when I go over all of my coloring with that E57, a lot of times it knocks down some of the deeper areas where that E59 is, where I started out, which is normal for Copics. But just to kind of boost that, I'm going back in at the end just to add a few extra strands with that E49 to really bring back that contrast and that detail. So now you can see I'm jumping down to the little cat and sheeting him in with those cool gray markers. Like I said, I kept his overall sheeting pretty simple. I didn't want to go too crazy, but then I decided he was too simple and I added in some stripes. For a minute I forgot how the pattern of cat stripes go, and so you'll see I start out doing 3 on his little forehead, and then the ones on his back I start going up and down, and that didn't make any sense. So then I decided to switch it up and go horizontally, which, go figure, turned out a lot better. I don't have a cat, can you tell? So now I'm going in with those dotting motions and all of my different greens that I used on my ornament to start to create that glitter effect. And then I went over the whole thing with my white gel pen, just kind of stippling and making sure that I went over some of the black outline as well, which I think really helped to sell the whole glitter effect. I used that mini Slimline die to cut out my scene, and then I just adhered it down to my card base using my Tombow Mono permanent adhesive. And for a little bit of an extra festive touch, I grabbed my gold tinsel confetti mix from This Calls for Confetti. I just loved the gold tones and how fun the kind of like stripes running through this confetti is. I didn't want to go overboard, so I just added 3 kind of scattered across my card, creating kind of that triangular shape. You can see I always kind of play around with different positioning. I decided I wanted one of them to kind of go off the edge of my die cut panel, just to kind of break through that layer onto the pattern paper. And once that was adhered, that was all set. So I am so grateful that you came to hang out with me today. If you want to learn more about Stamping Bella, please go check them out. I'll have their Instagram and website listed down below in the description for you. But again, thank you for being here today. I hope you have an amazing week, and as always, happy crafting.